attack on the Ayatollah. What's going on, guys? Which is not a surprise. So, Monday morning, man, we in the booth. What's going on? What's going on? Looking at price, man. Haven't put on a trade as of yet. Watching price react to yesterday's high. Put some specific lessons in my trading plan last week, not to do any breakouts right now in this environment. So I will not be taking this breakout trade over 60.97. We'll let price pull back and see what happens. But overall, we're targeting this London low, 60.55 zone, Asia high, 60.52 zone, also correlating with last Thursday low around this area. As you can see on this 4 hour last night price action, we had the gap down and price literally just skirted right up. So we're just gonna sit back and wait and see if we're gonna get our position based off the 4 hour to 60.50 zone. That's about it, man. We got Meet Kevin on the TV, keeping up with the Iran and Israel news. Yeah, man. So we're here, man. It's Monday on the live stream, man. Getting everything set up. I'm back on StreamYard. Hopefully it's not too choppy for you guys. Hopefully it's not too choppy, but we're here, man. Partner just walked in. What's going on? Yeah, man. Live in the office right now. Live in the office watching this price. Actually gonna go ahead and get my execution chart at the front of the screen here. This is what we're watching, man. Price is contending at Friday's high right now. So let's see what happens, guys. Besides that, about to roll a little blunt. We'll be here for a couple hours. Y'all get comfortable, man. Yes, sir.
without direct U.S. involvement?
We are very grateful to President Trump for his support and friendship, and also to other nations who explicitly stress that Israel has the full right to defend itself by eradicating and removing the Iranian nuclear program. As per the facts on the ground and the capabilities and what's up next, I don't really feel that I have the capability of giving you all the details. But I'm quite confident that what we've shown so far can continue dramatically and can change the course of how things are also in Iran. After all, the Iranian people have been oppressed for decades, and we all believe they're fed up, and it is their chance to rise and change the regime. But it's not one of our objectives per se. Our objective is to remove the Iranian nuclear program, which includes with it a massive missile program.
How much has Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile capability, Mr. President, been set back with these latest Israeli strikes?
That's unclear.
We believe it's been set back in many ways. We will come out with it once we conclude all the details. You know, we've hurt and we've undermined and we demolished a lot of their infrastructure of terror and nuclear capabilities, but there's a lot of work still to be done.
President,
Yeah, remember, no evidence yet of the U.S. involvement in providing bunker busting bombs.
Thank you.
and we'll be right back.
That's an interesting interview. I mean, I don't know that it really changed anything, but it really just sort of reiterates what we saw in the BB interview yesterday, where you're kind of like, all right, yeah, this is going to keep going on until basically Iran rolls. That's my expectation as well, as, you know, this goes until Iran's like, all right, we're done. You know, so once Iran gives up, I'm going to write that down. Once Iran gives up on uranium enrichment, this can end. We hopefully once and for all. On regime change, am I missing any? I don't know. I don't really think we are missing sort of any angles on this. But thinking about regime change, if you replace Iranian regime with puppet, Iranians will likely revolt over time. If you replace Iranian regime with nothing, Taliban or terror proxies could take over. If you replace Iranian regime with IDF soldiers, world and Iranians likely rebel against Gaza 2.0, right? Gaza 2.0. And then, you know, the best option, or the other option is to basically cripple Iran. Other option, cripple Iran and their weapons program. The problem
with Foil Fun, creativity comes to life. Choose the foam stickers, add a foil sheet, and watch the magic happen. No mess, just pure imagination. Create endless adventures with Foil Fun.
Not everyone's life runs in straight lines. At Sophia, we get that. Our flexible, affordable
facility. So we'll see. That's gonna be interesting. All right, let's pop on over for a moment. Let's see if Sarah's got anything for us. Is living in peace not an option? Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. All right, what do we got over here? Oh, see? Now they're talking about the story.
I also find myself agreeing with President Trump. If it is true that he told Israel not to take out the supreme leader when Israel had a chance to do that, because I think that all Muslim nations would have had to rise up against us being part of an assassination of a leader of a sovereign country.
The trust factor seems sort of hard to understand when it comes to diplomacy in a country like Iran, when even the UN atomic negotiators said that there's no peaceful use for what they have.
Indeed, Sarah, I understand this. And Rafael Grossi, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, just laid out where things are. They are quite concerned, as am I. This isn't about trust. This is always about verification. This is always about monitoring.
That's an interesting way to put it. That's the problem, though. Who's going to be the weapons monitor? And, you know, we've had this issue for years that, yeah, you could have weapons monitors, and then Iran just shows weapons monitors what they want to see, and they don't show everything, you know? And they're like, oh, yeah, you can go here, but you can't go in that door. Always.
In terms of national security issues about Ukraine, Zelensky and Rutte, head of NATO, were invited to it. I think, however, the top issue is going to be Israel and Iran.
Wendy,
At
we
the G7 she's talking about. Yeah, that makes sense.
expertise here and your perspective. Thank you for the time.
Sure.
All right, Sarah,
Take care.
give us some other news.
G7. Wendy Sherman, former Deputy Secretary of State.
Still ahead this morning, Meta tapping a new source of revenue, company announcing a major change for WhatsApp, and the street seems to like it. We'll get those details straight ahead. Later on, don't miss our interview with Omega Family Office
I wanna
Chair
see
and
that.
CEO Lee Cooperman. We'll get his latest read on the market, some of his
Meta
top picks right now. So stay with us.
WhatsApp. Let's see what's going on with the Meta WhatsApp. Meta WhatsApp introduces ads into its app. Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I feel like that took a lot longer than it should have taken, but okay. Meta is introducing paid advertising to WhatsApp. WhatsApp, which counts 200 million businesses, more than 3 billion active users. Wow, a lot of people using this. Will roll out a feature globally over the next months. The ads will appear in the status section of the messaging service, visible through the updates tab on the left, keeping them separate from the main chat. Long request we had from businesses. Before WhatsApp was acquired by Facebook, its co-founder made no ads, no games, no gimmicks a company mantra. Oops. Ads in status. Oh, that's interesting. Ugh. And then you probably some kind of like premium feature where you could pay for no ads. Ay. Leave it to Facebook to find another tool to monetize. All right, what else? So next, I think we've got broadly positive market right now. Look at this. Dave & Buster's now up 4.6, Bitcoin 177. You've got MasterCard, Visa still rebounding. You've got Metals still at 19%. Circle's almost at 24% now. Again, this was another one we sent to the Alpha Report group back, before the market opened. I put this as my top priority momentum trade today, and it's absolutely kicking butt. So if you're not part of the Alpha Report yet, make sure you go to meetkevin.com and join it. We did a whole, we started at 5:30 this morning going through data and analysis, deep dive into Circle as well. So we generally start about an hour before this live stream. All right, so what do we got over here? Q's up 1.5 now. Honestly, this last talk on Iran kind of begging for a ceasefire, probably bullish as well. kind of makes sense, right? Palantir topping out a little bit. Look at this. Palantir had a good 15-minute run, but slipping a schmidge. Nebius Group coming back up. Now that's interesting. They've had a few days of bleed here. Look at this. On just a sort of a technical basis here, you're getting a little bit of a breakout on this downtrend that you had. So if I just draw a quick little gray, gray that out, make it a trash line. Remember, I like the colors of my line to be like World of Warcraft rarity. So, my blue lines are more valuable than my gray lines. Green is more valuable than the gray. Purple is like, oh yeah, epic. Oops. Stop. What is this trash? It's all right. There we go. Clean that up. There we go. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted. It's a little bit of a breakout there. Not bad. Symbiotic today. Wow. What a move. I actually have a trash line for it too on a downtrend. How interesting. Yeah, I've got a longer term downtrend on Symbiotic line coming up here, and it's a gray line. So we'll see if we end up being able to push through that. But that, if I extended that, let's extend that out a little bit further. Let's try not to screw up the angle too badly here. Seems like we were somewhere right about there. Yeah. So that's going to be at about 30.84-ish at the moment. That'll be interesting. All right, what else we got? Let's see what the news is on AMDizzle. I know there's a lot of. Oh, let's see here. AMDizzle. Yeah, because it's just rocket shipping right now. Yeah, it is. Piper upgrade. Piper sees snapback for GPU business in Q4. Price target raised to 140 from 125. That's fair. I think that's fair. All right. Talking about the Paris Air Show on CNBC. I don't want that. I want Sarah. More blondes. What is this? That's not a blonde. That's an ad. Oh. So it was either Sarah or Taylor Riggs. Who do we got over here? I don't want this either. This is terrible. What the hell? Everyone's on ads again. Okay. All right.
Actions, what their conduct has been at the university, then we can't even grant those international students visas in the first place. So one of the things I'm looking for today is whether the judge is even going to entertain both of those things as one and the same or of a piece together.
And how does that litigation fit into then, like the broader?
All right. Let's go over here.
33 of them while waiting for desperately needed food aid. Israel also.
The food aid problem to Gaza is a big deal.
In northern Gaza. Palestinians trying to reach food distributed by the controversial Gaza Humanitarian Foundation describe it being deliberately targeted by Israeli drones.
We were walking on our way to get the aid when a quadcopter started firing at us. We began to flee, but he was hit by gunfire from the quad.
We went there thinking we would get aid to feed our children, but it turned out to be a trap killing. I advise everyone, don't go there.
This is a big failure for that distribution, and even the people in Gaza, no one can get that distribution, that aids. No one can get it. So it is failure 100%. We have to recognize that UNRWA and NGOs must again get that distribution and try to redistribute it for the Palestinian people.
Well, let's speak to Hind Khudarishi joins us now from Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. Hind, so more attacks near aid distribution centers, but people have nowhere else to go to get food, right?
Definitely, Palestinians do not have any other option. In the past couple of hours, Palestinians that were gathering after they heard that there are trucks that are going to enter in Khan Yunis have been shot at from Israeli artillery, and there are injuries that were transferred to Al-Nasr hospital. And every single day, Palestinians are not doing anything other than waiting near distribution points, waiting near trucks after they hear that trucks are going to enter. Earlier this morning, Israel killed at least 33 Palestinians with live ammunition as they were very close to the distribution points. Now, talking to Palestinians, they say that this is the only way they could get food. This is the only way they could feed their families.
It's just intense. All right, I'll pull off this for just a moment. We're gonna I'm gonna pull a interview here in just a moment. What is this? Curious to see this. So here's a let's see here. What is this? This is Alex's post.
Communities and just be honest. Well, obviously folks in the Trump administration.
Somebody says, why is oil down? Probably because Iran's going poopy doopy and trying to give up.
His work at latimes.com.
Temperature.
As we end down in fire, find the other side. Teen Jeer. Whenever bites in the most
Where's the
either solved of all agents are good, hard work.
I would say that don't just saunter into the federal building.
There's somewhere here where they talk about the Padilla issue. Oh yeah, here it is. Here we go.
Alex Padilla literally walked like right in this spot. What did that look like from your perspective?
It was a little bizarre and wild. We were up there holding a national TV press conference. The secretary was speaking, and just from the corner, I see he's a very large person. He's very tall. He's got a big demeanor, and he started charging, pushing his way through the security, shouting. We didn't know he was here. We didn't know who he was at the time. And then he started shouting, and then he was dragged out. It all happened in a matter of seconds. I think he did yell, "I'm Senator Padilla," at some point, but it was after all the commotion started. My understanding is he was taken outside, so we didn't see what happened. But my understanding,
You've seen the video,
I've seen the videos. Look, the agents, I think, were extremely professional. They did their job. Their job is to protect cabinet members.
Was it necessary to handcuff him out in the
They
hallway?
didn't know. I'll be honest. I talked to them. They didn't know who he was. They did not know he was a U.S. senator. It was the room was filled, as you know, with these press conferences. There's a lot of people in the room.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's a
I
lot
mean,
of
they
reporters.
just shoved that guy out there, and then the cops in the hallway are like, "Okay, let's detain him and figure out who this person is." It sounds pretty normal.
Journal, print, TV, and it just was someone that started charging, and they just went into defense mode. Their job is to defend cabinet members, and so they detained him. It is standard to detain someone, handcuff them, but as soon as it was known he was a U.S. senator, he was immediately unhandcuffed. He was never under arrest. He was free to leave, and I believe the secretary even granted him a meeting afterwards, and they spoke for about 15 minutes or so.
Well, let's talk more about what the press conference was about and
Yeah.
everything that's happened in this sort of extraordinary week.
But I just
Yeah.
need to say something about it, though, because if he wanted to meet and have a genuine good faith dialogue, there's a process and a way to do that. He could have requested a meeting.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Oh, that Donald Trump is reckless. He's immoral. He's taken the illegal and unconstitutional act of federalizing the National Guard, and he's putting.
Dude, he just got to get over this. You know, Gavin Newsom, I feel like, would just be so smart to just go, "Thank you for helping me make sure Californians are safe," and just shut up. You basically disarm all of the potential animosity. You know, it would be so simple. Just take the higher road and go, all right, this is abnormal, President federalizing the California National Guard, but you know what? Hey, thanks for that. And we'll keep doing our job.
Putting lives at risk.
I mean, is it truly unconstitutional? I know it's been done before.
Well, I mean, in his own executive order, it directs the Department of Defense to collaborate with state governors. So by definition, it's illegal. There was no collaboration. There was no counsel, no consideration of the rules of engagement. It was a reckless act that has led to conditions that have been exacerbated, and it's putting people's lives at risk.
You guys talked the other night,
Yes,
right?
we did.
What was that conversation
It
like?
was a very collaborative conversation. It was a very good conversation. And he didn't really want to engage on the issues of LA, which was the great irony of this. He wanted to talk about a myriad of other issues.
He came out and said that when you guys spoke, he warned you that if you didn't get things under control, he was going to bring in
Stone
troops.
cold liar. Stone cold liar. He made that up, like he makes up so many other things. He never said that.
And he also seemed to make up this idea that the National Guard did a great job last night when they weren't here.
They weren't even deployed, and he claimed victory. He's lost it. He hasn't lost a step. And I saw him trip on the steps today. I mean, this is serious. He is not the same person that I dealt with just 4 years ago. And he's incapable now of even a train of thought. He's making things up.
And lastly, there's a lot of people who are scared right now, especially a lot of people who are Latino who are here legally.
All right, this is boring. There's bigger news that we should cover. This is quite interesting. So, news just out potentially on Donald Trump's next trade deal. Remember, we have not had a single trade deal with a deficit country other than just sort of frameworks of continuations of talks like what we've had with China and sort of miscellaneous walkbacks. But a broader deal with a deficit country has not been reached yet since Liberation Day. However, now there is talk that the US and Vietnam are closing in also on a framework trade agreement. Now, what's interesting about this is currently reciprocal tariffs against Vietnam, which is really big for furniture manufacturing and restoration hardware. I'm pretty sure does quite a bit of their manufacturing out of Vietnam. Apparently, there is talk of a framework for a deal with Vietnam. Vietnam is seeking to secure tariffs in the range of 20 to 25%, said people interviewed by Bloomberg, but asking not to be identified because the discussions are still private. The agreement would include a series of U.S. demands, such as stricter enforcement against Chinese trans-shipping, basically the non-tariff barriers. Vietnam had earlier offered to remove all tariffs, as well as step up trade enforcement and boost purchases of American goods. However, right now, it still looks like they're going to end up with some tariff level around 20 to 25%. And this is actually interesting because, you're at 10% now, which means we would end up with, yes, more tariffs and more tariff revenue for the United States, but actually a higher level of tariffs that could potentially create more deadweight loss in the economy than we had previously anticipated. A lot of the Federal Reserve right now is hoping that tariffs end up somewhere around an average of 18%, averaging China into that on a trade-weighted basis. Anything more than that is something that could potentially crimp the economy more so than the Federal Reserve expects. This would be above that average at 20 to 25%. However, quote unquote, the final contours of the framework are still being fleshed out in ways that need to secure President Trump's sign off. Vietnam's foreign ministry has not responded, neither has the White House. Trump so far has struggled to reach trade deals for his July 9th deadline. We still have about 3 weeks there. Donald Trump has also suggested that he intends to send letters for basically like take it or leave it offers for trade. It's like, we will just peg your, tariff amount at X and go from there. However, even talk about deals like this around this 20 to 25% level for Vietnam, probably good for setting up the potential for making deals with other countries. So I'd say this is broadly optimistic, even though the tariff levels are higher than would ordinarily be desirable. Vietnam did offer the promise of a quick solution. However, we still need to ink the deal, yes. Some officials want to calibrate tariffs for Vietnam and other Southeast Asians to ensure they are sufficiently lower than what's being imposed on China. Yet if they're too low, the rates may only exacerbate Vietnam's high trade surplus with the U.S. and encourage further shipment of Chinese goods through the country. So in other words, if you keep like 55% on China, you want tariffs to be high enough on Vietnam that people aren't incentivized to funnel stuff to Vietnam and then to America, but you want them to be, high enough to still collect revenue also from Vietnam, because that is part of Donald Trump's big goal. Is Donald Trump loves this idea of revenue from tariffs. And that's obviously the broader risk for the U.S. economy, is that Donald Trump becomes addicted with the idea of tariffs to the point where it actually ends up crimping parts of the U.S. economy. Now, right now, optimism is very, very high. But if we look at the Empire Manufacturing Survey, I think you could see that, there are underlying cracks that we want to pay attention to. If you look at the full report here from this morning's Empire Manufacturing Survey, which took, this survey took place between June 2nd and June 9th. So broadly in sort of the current state of where we are with the economy, manufacturing activity actually fell for a fourth consecutive month in New York State. The Empire Manufacturing is just related to New York State, so it's not sort of a full U.S. picture. But it gives you a very interesting POV. It says manufacturing's down, unfilled orders decline, so they're able to catch up on orders. They're also pointing to a decline in orders and shipments, which isn't good, right? So business conditions are actually getting worse. However, firms are becoming more positive which is this interesting duality. You're in an environment right now where capital spending plans are soft, but people are optimistic for future business conditions. They're optimistic about taco or whatever, Trump always chickens out, or a trade frameworks coming, or American exceptionalism or whatever. And we actually ended up getting an increase in employees, the first positive reading since January, even though the average work week declined 1.5 hours. So you're really in this sort of weird place where pricing power is weak, the economy isn't exactly booming in terms of companies' abilities to raise prices and consumer spending, again, with new orders and shipments declining. But there's so much optimism around, hey, as we get deals, as we get a resumption of the norm, maybe these new order declines will prove to be temporary, and we can get back to optimism. So these are all current conditions here. If we go to forward-looking indicators, you can see here's that optimism, which is basically V-shaped recovering. Interestingly, the looking forward, there's the belief that we are going to see more new orders and more shipments, but we're not seeing that in the current conditions. So hope with new orders and shipments expected to increase, but again, not being met by present data. However, I would argue that if we ended up getting a deal with a deficit country like Vietnam, it would broadly be optimistic. It's possible that's why we're starting to see some rise on Restoration Hardware here. I do think that Restoration Hardware was able to kick the can of tariffs down the road until at least the third quarter because they built up inventory to really get through all of Q2 without having to pay tariffs on their wares. However, come Q3, Q4, they're going to start taking a hit. And honestly, at 20-25%, that's quite a chunky number. But I will say broadly, good news that it looks like there might be some progress finally coming on tariffs and deals with other countries, though surprisingly higher than the 10% where these Vietnamese tariffs are presently set. All right, let's pop in over here.
G7, Megan, we'll talk to you soon. Let's turn to the Middle East, of course, with Israel and Iran pressing forward with attacks. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engels with us this morning. He's on the ground in Tel Aviv. Richard, it's good to see you. Markets had to field so many headlines over the weekend. Talk about how you're viewing the current framework right now.
Well, this is different than previous conflicts. This
time is different.
A fire between Israel and Iran. This is much more like an open war between Israel and Iran. It feels like there's nothing almost off limits. The two sides are attacking each other's cities. This began, of course, on Friday. So we are now in day 4. And it began with that targeted surprise strike by Israel, where Israel used drones. Some of those drones smuggled in to Iran by the Mossad. They've released some images of how they did that. Some carried out by air attacks on nuclear facilities. But it expanded over the weekend. And now the Iranian government is under attack. Government buildings, the police headquarters, the Quds Force, which is part of their security force, has also been hit. And generally, the Israeli missile defense has been strong. Most of the incoming fire of the ballistic missiles that Iran has been firing and some drones have been shot down. But that system is being challenged, and a growing number of those missiles are getting through, and the death toll in this country is rising. It is now more than 20 Israelis who've been killed. I just came from a satellite city called Petah Tikva, which is about a 20-minute drive outside of Tel Aviv, where I am now, and an apartment building there took a direct hit. And several people were killed in their safe room. Now, safe rooms are ubiquitous in this country. People either have bunkers underneath their buildings or new homes are generally built with reinforced rooms in them. In this case, the ballistic missile slammed right into a safe room. So even though the air raid signals went off, people had forewarning. They did what they were supposed to do. They went to their safe room. Several people were killed nonetheless in Petah Tikva. So this is a different kind of conflict that Israel's faced before. It's not facing a militia group embedded within the state. It is fighting a state itself. and Iran has declared that it will keep fighting. Although Iran does say it is open to negotiations, but it has canceled this current round of talks that was.
Yeah, that was the Sunday round of talks. I mean, that's old news, right?
Is there any talk from the Israelis about how successful they have been at this point in their objectives?
The Israelis say that they have freedom of movement.
Nvidia is really popping right now. I don't know if it's because of that potential tariff talk on Vietnam and maybe some de-escalation of some of the tariff tensions or what at the moment, or it's just following AMD.
At this moment, he's looking to achieve this country's military objectives, which, technically speaking, are limiting, if not destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities, destroying its ballistic missile capabilities. But now the targets are going well beyond that, attacking fuel depots. And Prime Minister Netanyahu has called on the Iranian people to rise up. So it seems that his goal is more of regime change. And when he says he's not looking for a ceasefire and he's telling the people of Iran to seize this moment, it does not seem like we are in a limited war or a limited exchange of fire.
Yeah, that means the end is near.
Tel Aviv.
When the media tells you it's going to go on forever, it's over soon.
Alert.
Ooh, Sarah.
Richard Nephew. Richard's also served as deputy special envoy for Iran
No, I don't want
during the
Richard.
Biden administration.
No, I do not want Richard. I want Sarah.
During the Obama administration. Richard, from your estimation, where do you think this goes?
Look, I think the Israeli campaign still hasn't achieved its primary objectives of making it sure that Iran can get nuclear weapons. And I think that there are a lot of additional facilities that would be required to be struck, some of which may not be accessible by Israeli munitions. And I think their strategy right now is to try and sap the will of the Iranian government to fight on, see whether or not they can get to some kind of prejudicial deal, and failing that, to bring the United States in so they can attack the facilities that Israel can't reach.
Why isn't the United States and the rest of the world, for that matter, more willing to help Israel achieve that target, which would be better for world peace?
Well, look, I think it comes down to what the scope of the conflict is. I think for a number of years, people have understood two things. One, that an attack on Iran wouldn't be simple, it wouldn't be easy, and it would take a lot of time. It also may not be able to achieve its objectives because of the significant advancements the Iranians have made in the nuclear program, how close they are to weapons, and the risk of potentially setting them off down that path. Iran was 5 to 6 days away from having enough material for its first nuclear weapons before this started. We're on day 4. That gives you a sense of what the clock might be potentially looking like. That doesn't mean that Israel is precipitating an Iranian weapons decision. The Iranians still have decisions to make, but it's a very clear risk. The second big risk is what the Iranians choose to do in the region. Iran has not yet targeted U.S. bases. They haven't targeted regional energy infrastructure. Those are all things that are part of the target set if the Iranians believe they're about to be defeated, or if they think they have to escalate to de-escalate and to convince the Israelis to back off, or other people to put pressure on the Israelis to get them to back off.
So you do think that it's more likely that if they face some sort of existential moment, that they'll act out rather than rush to the table, as this journal article, for example, suggests?
Look, I think the Iranians have demonstrated over time they're prepared to use a bunch of different tools all at once. So I think they would absolutely be prepared to seek negotiations and a ceasefire. I don't think that's because they would intend to surrender the nuclear program. Candidly, I think if they were to get additional time, that probably means it's more likely that they will try and push forward to at least get a lot closer to nuclear weapons to be able to increase the severity of their threat, in part to ensure negotiations are successful. But second, if negotiations buy them any time to catch their breath, that would also be an opportunity for them to, continue to exert pressure through military means on the region. So the Iranians aren't done yet. I think that there's some talk about them being close to regime collapse and so forth. I think history suggests not. I think that the Iranian control of the state, their ability to exert internal force, also suggests not. It's always possible that something significant, changes in Iran. But right now, I think we should be expecting this conflict to last for a good long while.
I don't know.
Do you
about
think
that.
it will be obvious
I don't think Iran can manage to keep this going for much longer.
with U.S. Assets and participation or not? Will it be obvious when their nuclear capability has been removed, if it ever is? Or will
No,
we be
that'll never be
in
obvious.
a moment of guessing for an extended period of time?
Yes.
Frankly, I think we're in a moment of guessing. I mean, so, we've got two problems here. One, the facilities that are in question that only the United States can hit, the United States would have to hit them, and then you'd have to do a battle damage assessment to try and see how successful you were. But also, we've had an element of time. It's been time for the Iranians potentially to move material out of those facilities and deploy them in other places. Second problem we've got is that the Iranians have been able to, build up a stockpile of centrifuge and other nuclear components over the last several years when they've not been implementing the terms of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and the additional transparency steps that have been there. So it's entirely plausible to me that the Iranians have additional nuclear sites that are not disclosed at which they could be doing all this work. So even if they agree
100%.
to a deal tomorrow, if you don't have very significant inspections and you don't have the ability to go anywhere, anytime.
And those have to be trusted inspections is the problem too, because we've tried this weapons inspection stuff for years, decades.
For them to proceed down nuclear weapons path, then that means we may not know whether or not the Israeli operation is successful for quite some time.
All right, Richard. Well, thanks for talking us through it. Some of the risks out there. Richard Nephew from Columbia.
Thanks.
Still to come this morning, billionaire investor Lee Cooperman's with us. This warning of a prolonged underperformance for the broader markets. We'll talk about that. He'll give us some of his top individual picks as well.
No way. Hold on. Is it? This is Israeli state TV, or sorry, Iranian state TV. Oh, no way. No way. Iranian TV station literally got bombed. The lady looked like she was fine, but the place literally gets bombed while she's live. No way. I gotta tweet that. Iranian media station appears to get bombed